All right, here we go. My volume levels went down to the basement here for some reason on my broadcaster software. Glad we picked that up, and also picking up Venus here. Seeing that just 10 minutes ago. Big fiery planet there. It's always kind of fascinating looking at that, thinking what's going on up there. But anyway, I figured we would do it something different for the opening because we've had one day after another of this clear sky, and that will change next week, but I figured we needed to mix that up a little bit. Probably getting tired of that clock too. So this is the current picture. Look at that, we got a little weather action going on out west. So we're looking at the surface chart here, and the first thing we need to figure out is if we're looking at highs or lows. So let's do that real quick. Let me bring up my sketching software. Okay. So we can see that we have higher pressure right in this area. So it's going to be high pressure right there. Same thing right here, that's high pressure. And then up to the northwest we have lower pressure up in this region. So that's low pressure up in this area. So what we can see here across northern Nevada in southeastern Utah is a bit of a meso-high from some showers that we had earlier today. So this whole little area is a ridge. It's a large meso-high. Getting some showers there in northern Nevada. That's kind of unusual for this time of year. So what's causing that? We can just run over our thickness chart very quickly. So there we can see big lows up to the northwest. Another low in western Kansas. So with that, we're going to draw a front kind of like that from eastern South Dakota to Illinois. So that's going to be a warm front. And then somewhere in this region, we're going to have a cold front because we have this large gradient up here. So can't really tell exactly where that's going to be, but maybe something like that. Kind of go with that for our initial position. And then the rest of it's going to be probably an included front up this way, maybe an old occlusion up in Washington. And then south of this region we have a bit of a lee side area of cyclogenesis just off the Front Range. So there's our low pressure right there in western Kansas, extending down to either a trough or a dry line in West Texas. And as usual out on the East Coast, got a big old high out there, big old decaying polar front, and up to the north this looks like an old occlusion. So that's kind of the general picture of what's going on. So Texas here is under a very weak southerly flow, and you saw in that video earlier we had a bit of stratus earlier this morning that burned off about 10 o'clock and gave way to clear skies. So that's very characteristic when we're under this southerly gradient with a bit of a fetch of moisture. So just a quick look up in the Pacific Northwest right there. Very cloudy. And you can see a bit of a structure here that's kind of associated with a frontal system. A bit of a baroclinic leaf structure. Maybe another one in here, certainly possible. And out ahead of that, you can see how there's an affinity for these clouds to develop on the mountain ranges right there. So we get the daytime heating, we get a bit of that mountain flow off the, or that mountain the mountaintops, the slopes, they heat up a lot faster than the valleys as the day goes on. So we tend to develop clouds along the top of that, and those move out into the valleys. They either advect into the valleys as the afternoon progresses. And so we end up with a structure kind of like this. Getting ahead of myself there. And out here in the San Joaquin Valley, right there, we go from a transition from fairly clear air around Bakersfield up to very cloudy conditions up north. So that would be a sign that we've got a front laying through there somewhere. So we can kind of work that out on the surface charts and just take a quick look out that way. Can't really tell exactly where the front is at first glance, but we can see there's very warm conditions in the Mojave Desert. Lots of 80s down there. As you go north, 50s. Now some of that is wet bulbing of the air mass, very dry air mass. You rain into that and your temperatures tend to fall down to around the dry line readings. So the dry, unaffected air has dew points in the 30s, so we're going to fall probably to the 40s, and that's what we have up here. But some of that is also going to be an air mass change. We saw yesterday we had a north wind at Salt Lake City, so looks like that's kind of continuing, and so we've probably got a front maybe laying something like that. Kind of stationary, probably starting to work back northward with this very strong southerly gradient picking up here in this region. And south of that you can see the very characteristic southwesterly dry winds out in the warm sector. This is very common, and if you're flying into Las Vegas on a day like this, you can expect it to be very bumpy in this kind of scenario. And a lot of times they're landing on that diagonal runway from the northeast there. Normally they land from east to west there. So that can give you a bit of an unusual tour of the city when you're flying in there. And here in Texas, you can see a dry line. Got just enough activity here to form a bit of a gradient between dry air to the west. See those dew points, 15 and 20, all the way up to 60 here along I-35. And so when we're getting these dew points from the upper 60s to the lower 70s, that's when we get the stratus and low clouds developing in the morning. And one other thing we can kind of pick out here is the moisture axis. Now one way we can do that is to just analyze the isodrosotherms. So our 60 line is going to be way out here and over here. The 65 line is going to go something like this. And we can change up the interval, maybe do 67, and we'll get something like this. So you got to do whatever you can to bring out the data you want to see. So that's why I'm jumping isodrosotherms. We can do a 69 here, and then up to 71, and then 73. So that's your moisture axis right there. Maybe I can draw on a 67 here. I think I'm missing one. So there we go. There's the moisture axis right there. From the Beaumont, Lufkin area up to Texarkana, Fort Smith, and up to Joplin, Missouri. So that's, if you have a front working down to the south, the intersection of that moisture axis with the front is going to be your favorite area of thunderstorm development. And if you have very weak flow and very weak steering flow and very strong storm relative inflow, that's where you're going to get even a possibility for an MCS, like a derecho. Strong instability would certainly help that out too. So here's the streamline analysis right here. You can see it's dominated by this low pressure system in the central U.S. There's the lee side low in Colorado, and our frontal system up in the Dakotas and Saskatchewan. Then off the coast, more of this development of a frontal system out there. So when we have pressure falls out to the west, that's going to help favor increasing southerly gradient in the western states here. So even though we have a front laying across that region, that southerly gradient is going to bring that back north. And that'll finally sweep through when the cold side comes through and moves over that area. And I guess maybe just for the heck of it, we can look at the boundary there in the northwest. We haven't looked at any soundings in Oregon, but we can do that here. So yeah, we've got a very moist profile, and it's cold. So we can see a surface temperature of 52 there, and it's moist to adiabatic all the way up. There's not even any warm air right off the surface. So this is a good sign we're probably back behind a frontal boundary. That and this thing here that looks probably like a frontal inversion up there at about 8,000 feet. Go a little bit further south to Medford, and kind of a similar picture, bringing in a little bit more warm air just off the surface. And then we go down to Reno. There we're still looking a little bit cool, but the column is a little bit drier. And then we work our way down to Desert Rock. Now we're starting to get into some warm air here, especially aloft. And the profile starts at about 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and you can see there's a lot of warm air just off the surface. So this is another way you can kind of put together all your tools to kind of assess the air mass over a large area, especially out in the west where these fronts are hard to find. Take a look at Edwards Air Force Base. My roommate in Las Vegas, she ended up working at this radio science site at Edwards Air Force Base. So I don't really remember any stories from there, but she did some of these launches, and maybe I can round her up on Facebook some other date, and she can kind of tell you what went on out there, what was involved launching the balloons there. But yeah, this looks very warm. You can see, even though at 12Z, which is about 5 in the morning there, we start out with a surface temperature of 50, which is 10 Celsius. But if we get a little bit of heating, that'll erode this inversion right here. And you can see we're going to warm up very quickly to upper 60s. Then after that, we're going to warm up fairly easily into the 70s. So this sounding right here tells us we're going to get a good warm-up, and we're going to be certainly in the warm air mass right here, warm and dry. So you can kind of put that together with your surface chart, and that'll help you kind of firm in where exactly all your boundaries are. Okay, so that takes us to the forecast here. I've got the GFS all ready. So what I have to do now is position the window so you can see that. Okay, so now we're going to start out with our first chart. This is the current picture. So we'll just kind of put in the fronts very quickly. There's the stationary front across the western U.S. and the warm front around the Iowa area. And you can see off to the coast there's that area of cyclogenesis. So going forward into the work week, good grief, it's Sunday night. Seems like these days are flying by. We see a very good push of cool air into Nevada and Idaho right there. You can see it's very cold too. We've got 546 decameter thickness lines, so that's just a touch above what we would need for winter weather. And we can see that's making some headway to the south, into the Salt Lake City and Boise Snake River area. And there it goes. It kind of kicks southward a bit and even into the plains right here. So there we go. So it kind of pushes down towards Las Vegas, the Four Corners, Pueblo, Wichita by Tuesday. And we get this little straggler low pressure area, looks like over Omaha, very weak, not much frontogenesis there at all. And not much picking up that boundary there, so it just kind of sags into the Oklahoma, Texas area by midweek. And so we find it about right there. It does make some headway into Arizona and New Mexico, coming up on Phoenix there and Albuquerque. Looks like it's clearing part of Southern California there. Then by Thursday, it looks like we get some anti-cyclogenesis, helping to strengthen that high pressure area out in the western U.S., and that helps push the boundary southward by, looks like Wednesday night, Thursday here. And that rapidly clears Texas, and we can see a very good drying trend here in the central and western U.S. See it right there. We dry out pretty well there. And as it passes, it looks like we suck some of this Hudson Bay air southward. There goes the 540 decameter thickness line all the way down to Minneapolis and Madison. And a couple of these lines moving all the way down to Arkansas and Memphis. So this is going to affect the Mississippi River Valley pretty good here towards the end of the week. Probably some cold mornings coming up here for Friday and Saturday. And that moves up into the northeast U.S., but you can see there's not much cyclogenesis up there, so kind of a weak funnel system moving through there. And that boundary does stay in place across the western and central U.S. right there, still in place. So something moving off the Pacific can pick that up, and we can have another go at some frontal action here. It looks like we pick that up on next Monday, so a week from now. So you see that right there. There's our next system coming together, situated around Rapid City there. This one looks like it has a little bit more of a punch. Here comes the 540 line again into the Snake River Valley. And there we go. We kick that air mass southward. Actually, even further south than that for October 27th. And boundary still across the very same area right there. So here we go again. And this one looks even stronger. Look at that right there. This is a ways down, though. This is like 330 hours. But wow, look at that. That's a stronger system. If we have enough moisture coming up from the Gulf, that's going to probably give us a good chance of some severe weather with this one. That would probably be from I-35 out towards the Midwest, kind of like that. We'll see what happens with this here. So I guess we're going to break out of this pattern finally in about 3 or 4 days. So we should have a lot more to look at here. Okay, guys, I think that's about it for me. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you at the same time tomorrow, 8 o'clock. Have a good evening.